It was on February 24th, 2022, when Russian forces began their invasion of Ukraine. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has verified more than 12,000 civilian deaths in Ukraine during the war as of January this year. About 8,000 Ukrainians made their way to Saskatchewan seeking safety. Since January 20th, when Donald Trump was sworn in as U.S. president, the drama, though, it's intensified. The man who promised to end the war with one phone call has now paused aid to the country under attack. Russia had the third largest military spending in the world in 2023 at $109 billion U.S., only behind the U.S. and China. To compare, Ukraine spent $64.8 billion U.S. Ukrainians with emergency visas are watching closely, and today on Blue Sky, we're going to hear from some of the refugees and the people who supported them. We're also going to get the latest from the federal and provincial immigration ministers. We also want to hear from you. Is Canada doing enough to support Ukraine and the people who have fled that country? Call 1-800-716-2221 or email us bluesky@cbc.ca. Alina Shailan came to Canada as a government-sponsored refugee in July of 2022. She's in our Regina studio to tell us more. Welcome back to Blue Sky.
Thank you.
Do you remember that flight over on that day in July of 2022?
Of course.
What do you remember most about it? Like, is it a vivid memory for you?
I remember very good attitude from Canadian, very good organizing this flight and trip, and welcome in Regina. We people meet us in airport. We received in airport work permit. It was in night, but anyway. Mm-hmm. And after we go by bus to University of Regina, where we stay 1 month. Mm-hmm. So we was lost it because of circumstances, but people very warm to welcome, meet with us, and we feel like we are like in small family as a Canada. Mm-hmm. So it was very, very kind, and we have eat in University of Regina, and we have like where to sleep, and we have all services. So during a week we receive SIN number, we can open bank accounts. Mm-hmm. So all these services come in University of Regina, and with Sasktel also
get phone service and
stuff? Yes. SIN number, bank, and also link, so we can have opportunity to have English language courses. So we register for tested. Everybody tested like what kind of level they are, and after we have opportunity like 1 to 4 level CB. SLB 1 to 4, it's University of Regina, and 5 to 8, it's Saskatchewan Polytechnic. So
it sounds like your welcome was warm.
Yes.
What was it like getting out of Ukraine? What do you remember about leaving?
It was good, transition period, because we don't know this country, what we expected, so we can, familiar with a little bit university. It was summertime, so no students around, so we just keep in touch with each other, with these services, and start to... It was also coronavirus, so we have quarantine 2 weeks. So we need to stay somewhere,
What was your life like before the war broke out?
I work on radio station as an advertising consultant. So I work on this
So this is a familiar space for you.
Yeah, but maybe I'm not on radio on air, but But
you're supporting a station.
Yeah, I have negotiation with director of businesses, owners, and help them to provide advertising campaign on air. So I work in Lviv, in Kiev, capital city. And also I was in USA as an entrepreneurship on radio station also.
What was life like when the war broke out? How did things change?
It's very changed and it's very depressed, and actually in every day with Trump it's without hope right now, because every day not very hopeful statement from Trump.
Mm-hmm. How was it? I know we all watched the conversation in the Oval Office between U.S. President Donald Trump and President Volodymyr Zelensky. What was it like as someone who still has family in Ukraine and is wondering if you may get to go back there?
No, of course Ukrainians want to go back there, but war not stop, and even stopped today. In 5 years, it can be continue when Putin will be just a recharged battery in all sense.
Mm-hmm. Were you affected by the annexation of Crimea when that happened in 2014? Did that have an impact on you?
We have big country, actually, 40 million people as in Canada, but not so big territory in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. But still, if something annexed in Vancouver, so Toronto maybe not so feel like this. But of course, it's like domino. Mm-hmm. It starts from Crimea, and now we have what we have, and in 10 years will be more influence. So. Yeah, but nobody expects that it will be war in 10 years like this. But now when we learned how Putin prepared for this war, it's actually very clear. But, everybody will have hope that never in 21st century, no war is like this.
Are you glued to the news?
I'm every day check all news.
I'm not sure if you're able to. Can you unplug, or is it something that you can't stop watching because it affects you so much?
I listening all bloggers in Ukrainian, because outside it's just like picture, but inside people know more better. Mm-hmm. So I use YouTube channels, a lot of conversation, interview, and from different perspective. Yeah, and so I know everything what happens. Mm-hmm. Every day.
We want to hear from you as well as this conversation continues. What do you make of the current tension between the United States and Ukraine? Is Canada doing enough? What role should Canada and other ally countries be playing right now? You can give us a call, 1-800-716-2221, or email us bluesky@cbc.ca. We were talking with Alina Shilan, who came to Canada in 2022. I'm going to turn now to Elena Kruger. She is the president of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, Saskatchewan's provincial council. Yes, an Elena and an Alina on the same show. I apologize in advance if I mix up your names, but I know this is just the way things go with Ukrainian names. She's seen a lot of how much Saskatchewan people have done to support new Ukrainians. She took on the role of president of the UCC just 2 weeks before the war broke out in Ukraine. Baptism by fire, I would say, Elena. And she joins us now on the line. Tell us about your work that you were doing before Russia invaded Ukraine. Where was the focus?
The focus of Ukrainian Canadian Congress is always, I guess predominantly cultural. We want to preserve our culture, our language, our heritage. We're very proud to be Ukrainian, but we're also very proud to be Canadian. And we cherish those values that other Canadians cherish as well. So our work was predominantly in that sphere of promoting and supporting our various organizations throughout the province, particularly with youth. And we did do some work with newcomers. They just weren't coming in with that same steady flow that we saw once the full-scale invasion took place. And so that's what changed things for our organization, where we had a provincial office staff of support people who provided settlement support or translation services, those kinds of things, a small staff of 5 people. It's now grown to almost 10 and 12. So it depends on situations. But And then, of course, so many volunteers who are helping the newcomer Ukrainians who are seeking refuge here in Saskatchewan.
Elena, I'm wondering, I know because my family came over from Poland that there's an appeal to Saskatchewan, but we have a huge Ukrainian population in Saskatchewan. What do you hear from people about why they want to come here, war or otherwise?
I think it's just the whole spirit of Saskatchewan itself. There's really that, as Alina said, there's that family feeling, that connection to community, that warm welcome. People feel that they belong, that they matter, and there's the real support for one another. And so that makes things very appealing to people who want to come to our province. There's that real sense of family.
What changed for you and the council after the war broke out?
Things just really exploded, if you'll pardon the pun. Mm-hmm. They really did. Suddenly we were meeting all the time. How can we help people? What's our next step? How will we organize opportunities for people to find shelter? People were suddenly saying, I can donate my time. I can donate these support structures. I can give someone a ride. Someone can stay at my house. And we had to coordinate all of those things. And it was really important that, and we're so grateful to our member organizations across the province and individual members of the province of Saskatchewan for stepping up and saying, how can I help? I've got this to offer. What can I do to support you in supporting those displaced Ukrainians who are seeking refuge?
So what kind of supports were you able to offer? I know you had, aside from coordination of all of those volunteer offers, I can only imagine the inundation. We are very known for being helpful in this province. But what were you able to offer as the UCC locally here?
Well, in Saskatchewan, we have a variety of different programs that we provide for supporting displaced Ukrainians. And one is a program we call E for E, or English for Employment, and it's an opportunity for newcomers to improve their English language skills and then specifically focus them to the skills that they will need in the workforce, as well as assisting them with how to apply for a job, how to write a resume that's current with Saskatchewan and Canadian standards, and even just going through those processes of employment. We also offer English language classes in our offices and through other community organizations who connect with us. We offer settlement services, so some of the things that Alina mentioned, those initial survival things that are needed, where you can find somewhere to live, how to connect with a social insurance number and establish a bank account and a telephone number, all of those things. So those supports are provided. We have special employees who work in translation and interpretation services, which is very important. And they translate official documents that people will need to settle in Canada or to assist them with immigration paperwork and those kinds of things. And so they offer translation not only from Ukrainian to English, but a number of other languages as well. And we also provide those services for other newcomers who might need that help as well, whether it's translation or interpretation. And then just even mental health supports, things that help people feel stable and feel secure. We're piloting a new program in Regina called Razom, which means stronger together. And this is to help families and individuals connect with the local communities and then give them opportunities to express themselves and have people to talk to.
When you took on the role as president, did you know what it would evolve to? Like, did you know that this is what you were taking on? Or what expectations did you have agreeing to be the lead at this organization?
It's been a moving target. And, while it can be very stressful at times and very, very busy, at the same time, I want to bring back that idea of community and support. Our community is so helpful and so supportive, and we have so many wonderful volunteers who all work together. And, this isn't something that I can do alone. And I really have to thank my fellow board members, our office staff in both Regina and Saskatoon who do a lot of the work on the ground and who provide that support.
Okay, I want to bring in Drew Wilby, who is Saskatchewan's Deputy Immigration Minister. Our Immigration Minister in Saskatchewan is Jim Ryder, who is also do you want to read, what is his Finance Minister, Immigration...
And labor relations.
He's a little bit busy. Drew Wilby is with us, and you're listening to what Alina has to say, what Elena has to say. What comes to mind as you're hearing these stories of both need and assistance?
What it does, Sam, is it puts a personal face on a terrible, tragic situation that's going on in Ukraine and, started years ago and continues to today. And I just thank you for telling your story and telling your truth and sharing that with us. It's one thing to talk about this in a general sense. It's another to actually see the impact on the individuals that are involved and what they live with on a daily basis. Saskatchewan has stood with Ukraine since the start of the conflict. And before that, we have a proud Ukrainian heritage here in Saskatchewan. We will continue to stand with the Ukraine in this unjust attack on their sovereign country, of course. We have been able to work with the Canadian Ukrainian Congress in order to provide some supports, some settlement supports. Some of the programs that both of our guests have talked about already were provided through the Ministry of Immigration and Career Training. We're continuing to do that today. And working to make sure that there are pathways available as well. We know that approximately 8,000 Ukrainian individuals have made Saskatchewan home since the conflict broke out. We know that over 600 have gained permanent residency in the province, 550 of those that have come in through the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program, which is the Saskatchewan immigration program to bring folks into Saskatchewan. And we'll continue to do that and prioritize, those folks that do apply into that SIMP program once we've released a slight pause that we're undergoing right now to accommodate the federal changes to our provincial programs.
Is there a gap at all? Do you see that there's anything lacking in service where maybe, and I'm asking you to maybe put yourself in a vulnerable position here, but where do you see gaps that maybe could be improved?
I think the most important part is for the agencies to work together, especially the government agencies to work together and not operate in silos, making sure that we do have some of those gaps covered off. I would be silly to say that every gap is covered because clearly that's not the case. Mm-hmm. That would never be the case. We know that those exist, and we'll continue to work with key partners like the Ukrainian Canadian Congress and others and those that are here from the Ukraine to see where potentially those investments can be made, what they'll look like, as well what settlement supports and services are there. And I think the important part now is bridging, from those that have been here for a period of time, from those settlement supports and services to what does that path to residency look like if they choose that. We've heard today, obviously, you want to go home. And if I was in that same situation and Lord help me, I would want the same thing. But if there is a choice to stay here, what does that look like and how can we help accommodate that on the settlement side as well?
An email from Lois as our conversation continues. She says, I wish Canada could do way more. Unfortunately, Canada doesn't have enough money, military personnel, or equipment to really make a difference. I wish Canada had been way more vocal when Putin invaded Ukraine in 2014. Maybe then he wouldn't have been so emboldened to invade this time. Canada must continue to help Ukraine any way possible and never become complacent about this, no matter how long this lasts. It's wonderful that Canadian citizens have been helping the refugees, and that comes to us from Lois, south of Swift Current. We would love to hear from you. You can give us a call, 1-800-716-2221, or send us an email, bluesky@cbc.ca. So the question I had for the federal immigration minister, among many others, was if Ukrainians aren't already here and the war continues, could Canada take on more? So I talked with the Minister of Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship, that's Mark Miller, and he says the answer is not really clear-cut.
We've welcomed already 300,000 Ukrainians. I think it is perhaps one of the more unprecedented mobilizations of foreign aid, or at least temporary pathways to Canada for people fleeing Russian aggression. We will monitor that carefully. We've never said the door is closed. It is a substantial number of people that we are working and making sure that we can take care of while the war wages on. There's no foreseeable end to it. So what I say to people that are here is we're not sending them back. It's no secret to anyone who knows it that there are visas issued to folks who have either traveled to the US or elsewhere and haven't traveled to Canada yet. I have not canceled those. So, we will always be there for the Ukrainian people, but the migration that we saw was mostly at the beginning. It came in waves, frankly, over the last 3 years, and has tapered off significantly since then. So simply speculating and not making any projection as to how the war may evolve, we believe the balance of people that have taken that difficult decision to uproot themselves, mostly from the East, have done so and already moved either to Canada, to Poland, to Germany, or to the US, or any other country that has opened their arms to Ukrainians.
Do you have any sense of what bringing 300,000 Ukrainians to Canada has cost us federally?
I think it's been, in my mind, an immense benefit. You look at the counterfactual, I don't think we would forgive ourselves if we had not done that, because it would mean that those folks would be left at risk. It doesn't mean there hasn't been an impact on the social safety net, which is a fact as well, as people get their jobs, integrate into society, go to school, use the medical system, look for housing. I would say, and this is a fair criticism of immigration planning generally, is that we have taken some very important decisions, whether it's Syrian refugees, Afghan refugees, resettlement of Ukrainians, that are important and were important for us as a society to do in the context that they were made. But it is a fair criticism to say that we probably should, and provinces should, have planned better for not only their integration, but their accommodation. These people will and are paying taxes. They are supporting the tax base. As with many immigration waves to Canada, that is something that is the story of our nation. But again, quantifying it, you have to look at both sides of the ledger. And sometimes there's a little bit of short-term pain, and it is for long-term gain of the country. And I think that's where there's a bit of a disjoint sometimes when you see a big stress on the services that the country can provide for these people, and the long-term positive impact of, one, making the population younger, making sure that the population can have a workforce that can support all the social services that the aging population that Canada has is properly supported, is crucially important. And refugees, temporary workers, international students all provide that benefit, but there is also a challenge in the short-term impact that can have on the economy and the planning that we put around it.
As Minister of Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship, Mark Miller, to be clear, I did ask him, is there a dollar figure? Like, do we know what this cost? And he said no. It would be impossible to figure out the exact dollar and cents value of what this cost across the country, because it was a concerted effort provincially, municipally, and federally. But I was curious what it costs to bring 300,000 people into a country and to help them for an extended period of time. Minister Miller also recently announced that Ukrainians living in Canada under the emergency travel visa as of March 31st, 2024, now have an extra year to apply for a new open work permit, and that extends it to March 31st of 2026. We do want to hear from you. Is Canada doing enough to support Ukraine and the people that have fled that country, especially under the new political tension? You can give us a call, 1-800-716-2221, or email us bluesky@cbc.ca. Drew Wilby is with us. He is the Deputy Minister of Immigration for the province of Saskatchewan. I saw you raise your eyebrows a few times, so I will let you respond to what the federal minister had to say. I imagine there are some things you agree with and some things you disagree with.
Well, thanks, Sam. I mean, as always, yes, we're gonna agree to disagree in some places, and we'll agree in others. And I think what's important to note is that my minister, Minister Ryder, wrote to Minister Miller advocating for the extension of those visas. Shortly thereafter, we saw that extension. We've been very clear on this as well. With what's happening in the United States right now and the potential for others to come up to Canada, that we would be more than happy to welcome those individuals and our share here in Saskatchewan as well. I mean, the fact of the matter is this, is that Minister Miller has an opportunity to open pathways into permanent residency. The Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program is based on economic immigration into the province, which of course, we have significant abilities here to do that. At the same time, they've reduced our pathways and they're not expanding their own. And so we've also written to ask for those pathways at the federal level to try to ensure there's some movement there for permanent residency for the Ukrainians that are here as well. And we'll continue to advocate for that. The provinces have borne a significant cost here, and that is important for us to do in the sense that, this was a population that we welcomed and we will continue to welcome. I know from a ministry perspective alone, we've spent over $5 million and we'll continue, to invest in those settlement pieces that we have. And of course, across the country from the provincial territorial perspective, that's the case. I'm surprised, Minister Miller didn't provide a little bit more information on that, a little bit more detail. But at the same time, that's his prerogative. So
he did say that there was a conversation that was happening behind the scenes that he couldn't reveal more on things to come as well. To be fair, him and I did talk last week as well. So there could have been things that you may be privy to that I am not privy to in those immigration political circles and you guys having those conversations. I'm curious, though, because he did talk about some of the challenges. And when he says the provinces, he wasn't just speaking about Saskatchewan. Are there any issues that you're seeing, whether it's housing or medical care or any issues just adding people to the population?
There'll always be those challenges, of course. We have fixed amount of resources and we try to adapt them as possible there. But obviously, as you've indicated, housing, healthcare, and others are the responsibilities of the provinces. It would be nice to see a bit more cost share in this area with the federal government. Those are sort of outside of my role and responsibility and would go to others around the table. But at the same time, I do think, when the federal government does make these decisions, that there's long-term policy impacts that are going to happen. Again, like I've said, we've been more than happy to do what we need to do on this file to help settle and to help bring folks in and to provide those supports and services that are there.
We do have people like Alina who are trying to find full-time work so they can apply for permanent residency here in Canada. What suggestions would you offer to people in her position?
Absolutely. And I think it's looking at where our employers are, and figuring out some of those pieces, what some of those bridging programs may be, to ensure that long-term work is in place. But the other piece of that I would offer is that there are streams through the federal system that don't necessarily rely on that full-time work, that they have the humanitarian streams to permanent residency that they're able to utilize. And again, we've advocated that the federal government and Immigration and Refugee Citizenship Canada should open up some of those pathways for those Ukrainians that are living here. So far, it's fallen on deaf ears. We'll continue to advocate for that, of course, on behalf of those that are here. But within the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program, as I say, we've got a slight pause on that program. We're looking to open that up by the end of the month, but we would be happy to take those calls and have our staff, work with folks to figure out, is there a pathway through the SIMP, or can we look at some of those federal streams that might make a bit more sense depending on circumstances of the individual? Because really that's what it boils down to. It's those individual circumstances that someone's facing in terms of, what that pathway might look like.
I'm going to go to the phones for just a second here. We have Lori in Saskatoon on the line, but when I'm done talking to Lori, I'm going to give Alina and Elena an opportunity to ask you questions. It's not often that they have someone representing the government in front of them, and if they have questions, you may or may not be able to answer them, so just know that's coming. But first, I want to go to Lori in Saskatoon. I understand, Lori, that you think Saskatchewan's done a good job.
Well, I think Canada has, and bravo, kudos to everybody who's worked so hard. But what we primarily need to do is support them militarily. It has to be done. We're being nice guys in a world full of thugs, and if we rev up our military commitment, it'll help protect them and us. And we have to show the world that we're not weak. And we need to mobilize the young men. I mean, we've got this situation with people dying. We need to, I've seen some of them on the street, and we can rescue them. We can not just rescue, they're material for the military. And the military at one point was the greatest institution for bringing people up from poverty, giving them dental care, medical care. And so I'm old enough that I remember neighbors had potatoes in their front yard, and they had a huge garden in their backyard. And we may have to do that. We may have to be strong and support the people, like real support. And both the federal, all of the politicians, it doesn't matter if it's Liberal or Conservative or NDP, they've just been paying lip service. And the Soviets were flying into our airspace forever. My husband was an Air Force pilot. I wish I had married my Ukrainian boyfriend, but...
Does your husband know that?
He was Canadian. Oh, he's ex. He's ex.
Oh, okay.
The military, yeah. But do people know that we were by ourselves helping Europe for World War II? The U.S. didn't come in, right, for a few years. I lived a perfectly good life with ice being delivered to, what we were refrigerating. My parents were incredibly strong. They chopped wood. If they wanted to ski, they got on trains and they climbed up the mountain and skied down. Mm-hmm. And they had to pump water. And my father ended up going to UBC during the war. He was part of the effort. We had, I think, the largest naval fleet at the end of World War II. Okay. So we have to believe that we can be strong, mobilize, and tackle your politicians. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Lori. Did she just say tackle your politicians? I don't think that's what she meant. I think it's a great time to mention, I get little breaking news alerts to my watch, if you're wondering. This is not an Inspector Gadget. But the New York Times just sent me a breaking news alert that says the U.S. agreed to resume military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine after Kiev says it would support a 30-day ceasefire with Russia. So, I mean, these things literally change moment to moment, minute to minute, and a lot of that has to do with what's going on in the United States right now. What role should Canada be playing on the global stage? Or maybe you've helped one of these 8,000 new Ukrainians in Saskatchewan and you want to share a story. Give us a call, 1-800-716-2221, or send us an email, bluesky@cbc.ca. Alina, as you're listening to all of these politicians talk, do you have any questions for the Deputy Minister of Immigration?
Yes, I have. Of course.
What's your question? Go ahead and ask.
So I work for City of Regina now and have casual position. And for, as you know, for provincial government, very hard to receive permanent position. So how I can apply for permanent residence that request that I need to have full-time job, permanent position?
No, I appreciate the question and, understand the challenges there for sure. And again, just thank you for, your honesty and sharing your stories today. Within the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program, it's used primarily as that economic tool to bring folks into the province. We've had some significant change. The federal government's foisted upon us some significant change where they've cut our numbers by half. And of that half, 75% of those individuals have to be temporary residents converted to permanent residency. So there may be some opportunity there in terms of looking at what those streams are. We're hoping to announce more of that at the end of this month after we lift the pause. But I think, as I said earlier, it's finding those pathways that make sense for that individual. In your case, maybe it is through the SIMP or maybe it is through some of the federal streams. What I'll commit to you is that I'll have my team work with you to figure out what some of those look like. They're much more educated in this area than I am and sort of the details and how that works. And so we'll take that information away today and I'll have someone call you and connect, and we'll see what we can look at for that. Because, I mean, as a government agency, our job is to reach out and to help people out and to help guide them through some of those very, very complicated processes and procedures and pathways. So if that's okay with you, we'll take that one away, and I'll have someone get in contact with you to figure some of those pieces out.
Sounds good.
Great.
I finished 2 bridging program, Sask Polytech and Regina Open Door Society.
Okay, yeah, definitely.
So
I'm happy we can make this connection. Elena, while you also have the Deputy Minister sitting in front of you, do you have any questions for him?
Yes, I do, actually. My question is relates to those newcomer Ukrainians who've come. They were professionals in Ukraine or paraprofessionals, and they have a specific skill set that could really benefit our province, particularly in sectors like healthcare or education. And so I'm wondering what kinds of support the government can provide or opportunities to help expedite that process of them gaining their credentials in order to be able to work in a role that's similar to the expertise and training that they had in Ukraine.
That's a fantastic question, Lana, and thank you first off for everything that you and the UCC have done in terms of being that key CBO provider of those services for those folks that are coming here. I mean, obviously we provide some funding, but it's you folks that are coordinating that on the ground. So just really appreciate the partnership that we've had with you. You've hit a key place, and that's the credential recognition side of the equation. And so from our labor market strategy, we've got 3 planks. One is training Saskatchewan people and getting them into the jobs available. The other is recognizing those credentials that are here, and then thirdly is recruiting individuals from other countries where we can for those needs that we have. But specific to the credential recognition side, that's going to be absolutely essential for us, is looking at what are those credentials, what do people have, how can we create again a pathway for them so that in case they're underemployed in their chosen profession or maybe unemployed in their chosen profession, how do we get them to the point where they're able to work in those areas that they have those credentials to do so. So we've got a branch within the ministry that's doing a lot of that work, and what I've tasked them with doing is looking at a lot of the pools of talent that we have, including this pool, and what would be some of those credentials that are there. Can we find a pathway to work with either our institutions or our CBO partners to figure out what does that look like to get them more gainfully employed, and then from there, is there a path to permanent residency as well? We know the labor market is incredibly tight, and with a lot of the opportunity that Saskatchewan has, 120,000 jobs by 2030, if not sooner, we're going to have to find those folks to get in there. And I think this is a key piece. So you've hit it right on the head, and I really thank you for that question.
Any follow-up questions? I feel like such a moderator here. It's usually me asking questions. Do either of you have any more questions? I mean, you can take it if you've got it. Elena, you look like you have another one.
for example, for this bridging program, so now federal government change opportunity to have volunteering. So everybody need to pay. So, for example, when we have bridging program, after we can have 1 month or 2 months volunteering, and it's have reference and can connect in Sasktel or City of Regina or provincial government. But now it's don't have this opportunity because change rules that every organization must pay, and this unionized organization can't take unpaid because they can't pay people because they have already, I don't know.
No, you're spot on there for sure. And what we have seen is a step back from the federal government, unfortunately, on some of those settlement supports, including what you're just talking about. So in the letter that my minister did write, advocating for the extension of those emergency visas, he also advocated for that settlement support to continue. We haven't seen that. I'd be interested if Sam was to ask Minister Miller that question again, what his answer might be. But we have, obviously from a provincial perspective, we'll continue to advocate for that and for the reinstatement of some of that settlement support that's there so that those pieces can be put back into place because they are incredibly valuable. Case in point, incredibly valuable in how they have been for you. So we need to make sure that those supports and services are there.
Okay, I want to get some reaction from Elena and Elena on this because here's some more on that breaking news alert that I told you about. It's just a short summary. We'll have more on CBC as the story comes out. But Marco Rubio, who is the U.S. Secretary of State, and the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz in the States, they were speaking in Saudi Arabia today. We know that the U.S. has proposed a 30-day ceasefire. Ukraine has accepted it, says Marco Rubio. The ball is now in Russia's court. They are hopeful that Russia will agree soon. The mineral deal is not subject of the talks today. You'll remember there was the conversation about Ukraine signing over some of their mineral rights to the United States in exchange for this. That was not part of the conversation. Elena, I'm wondering, you hear this. What do you think?
So Trump wants to support Putin to have surrounding of Ukraine. It's already, I don't know, very clear how he act and what he every day he change mind in different position. But what we make sure that Putin and Trump is on the one side and Ukraine on the other side.
Do you believe that this movement toward peace is going to happen? Do you think that Russia will accept it?
Europe now wake up a little bit, and even China have not so happy that Trump and Putin together. So it's every day changing, but they actually Ukraine have a lot of resources. It's war for resources, and so. Like show must go on. So it's they will be fight until we let them.
Elena, I'm wondering from you, as you hear a potential movement toward peace, a 30-day ceasefire, as someone who's working with so many newcomers, what do you think of the potential here?
Well, of course, we're always hopeful for peace. That's the goal, but it must be a just peace for Ukraine, not ceding any territory. We remember that it was Russia that invaded Ukraine in 2014 and then again in 2022. And so Ukraine needs to be at that negotiation process. And Russia, too, needs also to be held accountable for its crimes. And that's important. And as Alina said, it's nice to hear more and more support from Europe and other countries in the world who are now saying this is important for our world order in order to have peace. And we're worried as well that if this is a false peace or an opportunity for Russia to take a pause and regroup and rebuild its military, there's that threat of being invaded again and even extending further. And I think as Canadians, in the last month or so, we've gained a little bit of understanding of what it feels like to have your sovereignty threatened. Not to that same degree, but we have a little bit of that understanding. So, of course, we want peace, but it must be a just peace that will ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and independence for always.
As you're listening to these women speak about what it means to them, what role do you think that Canada should be having on a global stage as we, I think, have become more patriotic as Canadians than ever before after the last month and a half or so? Nobody likes telling us, it's our country, it's our way. But I'm wondering, I know you're the deputy minister, and I know you don't speak on behalf of the entire government, but you are working with all of these people who are here because of a war going on in their country. Do you think that Canada or even Saskatchewan could play a bigger role in helping move this along to a place where there is peace?
You know, I think you've seen our premier be very vocal on the file, my minister as well, in particular with their support of Ukraine and support of what's happening there, as well as things like going down to Washington, D.C. and having those conversations, with senior decision makers in the American cabinet as well as members of Congress. Premier Moe has been very clear where he is, defending Saskatchewan Canadian interests. My minister's been very clear in advocating for, obviously, for an end to the war in the Ukraine, but also for the support for those that are here and making sure that we have that in place. And so I think from that perspective, they've done a solid job of making our points, making our case, that Saskatchewan and Canadian case. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's always more that can be done. I would turn that over, to the work that the premier's done and go from there.
Okay, Alina, last question for you, because this is your country. These are your people. This is the land you come from. If there was peace, could you and would you go home?
In general, yes, but our country now need help and resources. So I would like to be more strong and to help my country. So.
Do you think you can do that better from here?
Yes.
And in what way? Just with connections and support in that way?
No, they need money. They need connections, resources. So I can help Ukraine more here right now, because we have lack of resources. Life very rich now, and. In Ukraine, in Ukraine, I mean. And so, of course, I would like to come back, but as I have permanent residence, I have more opportunity to visit country and help Ukraine and have job here, stable job, and visit Ukraine with helping and with donated.
Well, thank you. I don't know if people realize this. They hear your accent. Obviously, English is not your first language. You just did this entire show in English. And so we appreciate you and your time and your story and your bilingualism now as well. So thank you so much for coming in.
I'm now Polish.
I know. Your Polish might be better than mine, given that Ukrainian is your first language. Alina Shailan came to Canada as a government-sponsored refugee in July of 2022. We also spoke with Elena Kruger. She is the president of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress Saskatchewan Provincial Council. Elena, thank you for your time today. And also to Drew Wilby, who's the Deputy Minister for Immigration here in Saskatchewan. This was a great conversation, one that we're probably going to have more as this continues. But thank you all for being here today and for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.